Bowl game opt-outs. We had the Orange Bowl, I believe it was correct, between Georgia and FSU, and I think there were over 20 players that opted out in total for each side. We've seen some of
Mhm.
these players, okay, if they're a NFL draft prospect and they're not playing in the top 4 teams, they're just going to sit out. And this is going to drastically change, I believe, now that we have this top 12 instead of top 4 with the college football playoffs. Bowl game opt-outs, though, fair or foul, and what's your argument for your decision?
I I say foul because you danced with your team all season. Maybe you got to a point to where maybe you got to a bowl game, but it wasn't the bowl game that you necessarily wanted. Maybe you're going in the first round of the NFL draft, like a Keon Coleman or a Jared Verse or a Braden Fisk, someone like that on FSU. I understand the opt out there, but all 23 of them, no, come on, man. That impacted the game significantly. Kirby, I got to give credit to him. He even nailed that on the press conference. He said, "Fix it,
Right.
fix it,"
Right.
because that's why this lopsided victory happened. If FSU had all their weapons, that would have been a much different game. I'm not advocating that Florida State would have beaten Georgia because Georgia's
Right.
a mighty team. I mean,
Right.
they fumbled the bag against Alabama. That was their fault, and
Right.
they owned it.
Yep.
But
Credit to them. Credit to Bama.
credit to Bama. But when it comes to the Florida State situation, and I know Mike, he took the blame for it all. He took that 63-3, whooping, and he said, "Look, y'all didn't get my best, and I'm sorry." And I commend him for that. But he had a bunch of freshmen
Right.
and guys who have never played a down before, staring
Right.
down one of the best college football teams of all time. And
Right.
and you got a Lad McConkey and no Brock Bowers, but still a Lad McConkey and a Carson Beck. You got weapons,
Right. Right.
And I overall, I'm sorry to rant, but overall,
No, it's
I say
podcast, bro.
foul.
Yeah. I'm right there with you too. Mostly foul. The only reason I'm going to say fair is, like you said, if you are a first round pick or a highly recruited prospect, going into the NFL, because we know injuries can really, really happen at any time. And like we just talked about earlier on with the eligibility with Cam McCormick, a lot of his injuries happening. The
Mm-hmm.
best ability is availability. We've seen guys draft stock drop, like unfortunately, your guy Jordan Travis, his draft stock
Yeah,
is naturally going to drop because he didn't break a finger. He broke a leg, which is a
leg.
part of
Yeah.
mobility. Now, whether he broke a finger or an arm or a leg or fractured his uh, neck or whatever, not to be horrible about it, but at the quarterback position, it's going to affect you, and especially if it's an extremity that you have to lose a lot or use a lot. But the reason I'm going to say foul, mostly foul, is like you said, you ride with your team and you die with your team, and unfortunately, this era of waning, deteriorating loyalty is starting to rear its ugly head in college football. And NIL was kind of a thing of that. Let's go buy the best player. Now we've got eligibility. Oh, you don't want to be loyal to finish your 4 years in the 5 calendar years? Okay, well then they're going to make a little bit of flexibility on that. And then the transfer portal. And now we're looking at bowl game opt-outs, and this is why people have the conversation of, is college football getting better or is it getting worse? I think it's in kind of a gray area right now. In a couple of key years, thankfully the 12-team playoff is coming in. It's going to really decide where the sport heads for the future. But yeah, I'm going to say mostly foul because again, I miss the early golden days of football in general, back when those Troy Polamalu's, Bryant McFadden's, Lord, I'm trying to think, early Matt Ryan days, Donovan McNabb, Michael Vick. I miss those days. The Jason Taylors, the Ed Reeds, the Sean Taylors. I miss those hard hitting, unfiltered football days. And those
Oh
guys were as
yeah.
loyal as they came. You didn't see a Russell Wilson going to the
Mm-hmm.
Broncos. You didn't see an Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets. You didn't see a Tom Brady going to the
Mm-hmm.
Buccaneers. And as sports do change and they do evolve, this is going to be, in my opinion, a ripple effect that we see with the bowl game opt outs. Are bowl games dead if a top 12 team isn't playing in them? Is it even worth it of course they're always going to be played because of money, and college football is a big, not a big money grab, but it is a business behind it at the end of the day. We know that's what
Correct.
these franchises are. Do you think bowl games are dead if a top 12 team isn't playing?
Uh, no, overall, because I think the masses love college football.
Right.
It doesn't matter if it's Eastern Carolina University playing San Jose
Tennessee
State.
A&M,
Yeah,
right?
somebody's gonna watch that game and be like, they're gonna kick back with their boys, have a few drinks, watch that game, have a good time. I think that's what it boils down to there. I don't see the bowl game season suffering too much outside of the 12 main teams, because the 12 main teams are going to cover the majority of the New Year's Six bowls and such. You're going to have your powerhouse teams in there in the New Year's Six bowls, and everybody will just be excited for more football, I think.
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. To me, it's it's a little bit of a tough decision to actually make. And college football feels like it's this polarizing sport, and of course, any sport can be polarizing, but this is why I wanted to do a specific segment on it, because there's a lot of good, topics that go into it. Bowl games being dead if a top 12 team isn't playing, I'm going to say somewhat, because we know naturally more eyes are going to be on those CFP top 12 teams that are going for the national championship. And
Yeah.
we also have to second the fact that if these bowl game opt outs continue, and I believe penalties will come down, I believe possible sanctions will come down to where players are going to just have to get it together. I think NIL is going to have a correction. I think the transfer portal is going to have a correction. I think eligibility is going to have a correction. College football is kind of in a purgatory in a way, right? Like we don't really know what it's going to turn into. We just kind of feel like we're floating in this world of a sport, and we've got a lot of superstars and everyone's jumping around. But when the hell is the big bang going to happen and the new world of college football is formed, right? Because I don't believe this is the new permanent landscape of how the sport is going to play out. But if these bowl game opt outs continue, why am I going to watch, respectfully, Alan, a 63-3 Georgia ass whooping of Florida State if I can go watch, number one play number four
Yeah,
hypothetically to go to the, you know what I mean? Like I'm gonna want to see
absolutely,
the
brother.
stars. I'm gonna want to see the guys that are actually out there being loyal, running with it to the end. But I will respect the guys that play in those bowl games, because they're going to want to get every bit of tape, every bit of exposure, scouting reports, just reps in that they can get, because not only is football, literally a contact sport, but it's like figuratively as well. How many reps are you getting in? How many times are you seeing that? There's a reason that Brady and Breeze and Manning were so great, because they saw everything. You
Hmm.
couldn't get everything past them. There's a reason that
Absolutely.
Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman and Ed Reed were Hawks, because
Oh
they
yeah.
saw a lot and you couldn't get it
Yeah.
past them. Maybe their careers
Nope.
didn't end like we wanted some of the legends to, but you understand what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Speaking of Kirby Smart fixing it, do you think there should be a penalty or stipulations for opting out? Get as wild as you want to with it, bro. I don't care if it means
Yes.
that you have to not get drafted until
So
if you're a projected second round, you got to get drafted as a third round. Lay it on me.
I don't know what penalty you could come up with, but I do think there needs to be one for opting out of a bowl game, regardless if it's a playoff bowl game like with the 12 team system, or if it's a just plain Jane bowl game,
Mm-hmm.
like the Gasparilla Bowl or whatever. You know what
Wow.
I'm saying?
People stay saying that name. I'm like, that name caught some traction for some reason this year.
Yeah, on Tampa Bay. Yeah,
Right.
but Um, I think there does need to be a penalty, because your guys have relied on you so heavily this year. And let's say you're an integral part of that offense or that defense and they're missing you. That's going to cause that 63-3 butt whooping on national television, and it's going to leave the fans and the boosters feeling embarrassed. And I think that needs to be taken into account when opting out for a bowl game. Now, if you still want to do it and they offer you the consequences up front, be my guest. Opt out to your heart's content. I'm like I said, I'm not sure what penalty they can impose on a player for opting out of a bowl game, but I do think they need to do something to keep the Florida State versus Georgia Orange Bowls from happening ever again, because that wasn't good for college football. Even if you're a Florida Gator fan, they hate both of us. They didn't want
Right.
to see that. Come
Yeah.
on.
Right. Perspective too. I mean, you remember I was going to come over and watch the game. Obviously, life
Right.
and schedules got in the way, but I'm like, damn, bro.
What's
I
the point?
I know you probably wouldn't have wanted to watch that, and respectfully, I'm glad we didn't have to
I
watch that game
didn't.
together because that exactly we did it. That was an atrocity. I was out dinner, I was out having dinner with good friends because I
Yeah.
knew that over 20 people for two of
Right.
the best teams in the country that arguably could have been included didn't have all their players at their disposal.
Right.
So like, are you gonna go watch a 60-point blowout in a game that doesn't advance the college football playoff rankings, or are you gonna go
Absolutely.
watch a meaningful team as an underdog or a dominant force push to win the national championship,
Right.
especially in the first year of the 12-team playoff? I wouldn't be shocked, Alan, if these bowl game opt-outs continue and we have historic record lows
Right.
for bowl game viewership. Straight
Uh,
up.
I
And
wouldn't
I
be
hope
surprised
someone
either.
digs deep enough. I hope that I get the access to the resources to dig deep enough because you got to go really, really deep to see
Oh
that
yeah.
there. But I don't want that to be a thing. I got a crazy one that I actually just thought of, but I'm gonna be real with it. So if you're in any bowl game, there's
Hmm.
two outcomes. You're either playing your last game of the season and it's the Orange Bowl funded by boosters, whatever, viewership, or you're pushing for a national championship. You
Hmm.
should definitely play if you're in the top 12 teams. But if
Hmm.
you want to possibly not play in that bowl game, and I get it, the injury thing, I totally understand that. And part of me makes me want to flip my argument over to it should be fair because injuries can happen at any time. We literally saw Kyler
Yeah.
Murray tear his ACL just running up the side. But if you don't want to be down pat, stand on business, 10 toes for your team,
Right.
it's a possibility you shouldn't be able to perform in the NFL combine. Maybe the pro day, which is kind of
Maybe.
BS, but if you don't want to ride it out to the end of the season with your team,
Yep.
why should the NFL possibly look at you to participate in the combine? And the combine does matter.
Hmm.
People look at the 40 time, they look at your shuttle, they look at your bench press, your height, your weight, your broad jump, all that stuff, right? It's your raw measurement. That's basically your CRCT, right? For some of the
Absolutely.
older
Yeah.
generation out there with the standardized testing before you get to the NFL. You know what I mean? I think if in the penalty and stipulation could go anyway, and I'm just kind of spitballing because it's not. Well, not that I'm spitballing. I've dug deep to find some reasons for why there should be penalties, and as we discuss them here,
Hmm.
but anything can happen with these penalties and
Oh
stipulations.
yeah.
I think that they should not get to perform in the NFL combine. There has to be some
That's a good
sort
one.
of discipline or drawback for the
Absolutely.
lack of loyalty that is creeping forward, not only from the
Right.
NFL, but now into college sports. And I just, my mom always told me growing up, what you allow will continue. I believe that now at 26. I
Oh
believe that when
yeah.
I was 2.6 years old. You know what I mean? Like that's always been something that I've stood by. And if you don't correct that, it's going to continue to happen.